spent about the last 36 to 40 hours together having lots of great conversations about the challenges we face and learning about what some of our colleagues have done that may have solved some of those similar challenges. Now, did any of you have the experience that as you listened to your colleagues from other companies who had great ideas and how they solved problems in their organization, did you have ever the thought that said, well, that wouldn't work in my organization. We're too big. We're too political. We're too hierarchical. We're too bureaucratic. If those thoughts ever entered your mind, you are going to be astounded by our next speaker, Mike Abrashoff, and his accomplishments in, of all places, the U.S. Navy. And having read Mike Abrashoff's book, It's Your Ship, I've gained a new sense of what is possible through effective leadership. I'm so excited to have Mike Abrashoff here and know you will be inspired by his messages. So let me just share a little bit with you about Mike. At the age of 36, Mike was selected to become commander of the USS Benfold. At the time, he was the most junior commanding officer in the Pacific Fleet. He faced staggering challenges, including exceptionally low morale, unacceptably high turnover, and poor performance results. Maybe you've had some similar experiences. Few thought that this ship could improve, but with innovative business processes and leadership skills, Benfold was able to achieve breakthrough results I know we'd all like to see in our own companies. Personnel turnover decreased to an unprecedented 1%. The rate of military promotions tripled, and operating expenses were slashed by 25%. The USS Benfold became regarded as the finest ship in the Pacific Fleet, winning the prestigious Spokane Trophy for having the highest degree of combat readiness. Mike's leadership skills have been honed through a number of challenging roles. Prior to commanding the USS Benfold, Mike served as the military assistant to the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Dr. William J. Perry. In this demanding role, Mike accompanied the Secretary of Defense throughout the world on critical missions of national security. Other experiences that have influenced Mike's leadership skills include helping to draft the Air Defense Plan for naval forces in the Persian Gulf in 1990, coinciding with Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, and serving as the executive officer of the Cruiser Shiloh, where he traveled to the Persian Gulf in support of United Nations sanctions against Iraq. Mike is originally from Altoona, Pennsylvania. He's a 1982 graduate of the Naval Academy of Annapolis. You may have seen Mike's ship featured in Fast Company magazine and the Harvard Business Review. He's the author of 2 books, It's Your Ship, which all of you received at registration, and the follow-up book, Get Your Ship Together. I really practiced that line for a long time. But even better than his books, we have Mike in person. So please join me in welcoming Mike Abrashoff.
Hey, Leslie.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, and thank you very much. I'm from the federal government, and I'm here to help you today. And I'm working on a 3rd book on leadership. It's going to be called Ship Happens. If anybody buys that one, I'm going to write a 4th book. It's going to be called Ship for Brains. So, life after the Navy is pretty darn good. You're probably wondering what the good folks at Hewitt were smoking when they asked somebody from my line of work to come here and speak today. But as Leslie told you, a couple years ago, our ship got featured in the HBR and Fast Company. And I was asked to come speak at a business conference, and 1,000 business leaders from around the country were gathering down in Naples, and they asked me to come speak, and the problem was I had never spoken in public before, and I figured I'd be a breakout speaker speaking to 30 or 40 of the 1,000 people in attendance. And I got to Naples and looked at the program for the first time to discover that over the 2-day conference, there would be just 3 keynote speakers. One was the guy who founded Visa. Second one was a guy by the name of Tom Peters. And immediately following Tom Peters is the schmuck from the U.S. Navy. And I was so nervous, I got no sleep the night before. And I get up after Tom Peters, I'm nervous and I'm exhausted, and 20 seconds into my speech, a lady in the front row got up and made a very visible display of walking out on me. And the sweat just started pouring off my face. I couldn't believe I'd be that lousy that soon in my speech that people were already leaving. But I stumbled through the rest of the speech, and I met this lady at another conference 4 months later. And she came up to me and said, "You may not remember me, but I was the lady who got up and walked out on you at your first speech." And I said to her, "Lady, I'm never going to forget you." And she said, "I need to tell you why I left." She says, "I'm from Berkeley, California, and I hate the U.S. military." And she said, "I didn't think there was anything I could possibly learn from anybody in your line of work. And so I was going to go do voicemails and emails." And she says, "What you don't realize is by the time I got to the exit, I realized I faced the same challenge you face. That yes, I can order my people to get a mission accomplished, but I can't order great results. And the great results only come about when us leaders, us captains of our ships, create and lead engaged employees and get them to take as much ownership of our business as we have for it and put the proper processes in place that will enable them to deliver excellence each and every day." And she says, "What you don't realize is I turned around and took a seat in the back row and listened to my speech, and to this day, 4 years later, we've become best friends. We email each other every other month on ideas that we can try new to create and lead our people better." Also, after that first speech, a lady came up to me and says, "What we liked about you is you're not polished." So I'll probably be the least polished speaker that you have here at this conference. But also after that speech, I started getting calls from literary agents, and they said, "You ought to write a book." And I'm here thinking, guys from the Navy don't write books, but after 6 or 7 agents called, I thought maybe I should. So I called my mom. She was 80 years old at the time. I said, "Mom, I'm getting out of the Navy." She says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm going to write a book." She said, "You don't even read books." So here I stand. And I'd like to share with you some feedback that I've gotten from people who have read the book and have decided to use it as a means to improve their own ship. And one was from a small business owner in Chicago. He had 20 employees. And he wrote me and said, "Mike, I'm doing pretty darn well. Last year I had $2 million in profits." He said, "The problem is I work from 4 in the morning until midnight 6 days a week. And a year ago, my sister gave me a copy of your book. And she says, 'Look, you're doing well, but you're never ever going to be able to improve because there are no more hours in the day in which you can work.' She says, 'You're going to have to figure out a way to lead your people better.' And she said, 'Here, read this book.' And he wrote me this email, and the day he wrote it to me, it was 4:27 in the morning, so I believed him. He was still working, from 4 till midnight. But he said as he was reading it, it struck him how many hours a day he was spending doing $10 an hour work instead of focusing on doing $500 an hour work. And he realized that it wasn't his people's fault, that it was his own fault, that he had never had discussions with them about what his expectations were of them. And they never had the opportunity to tell him what their expectations were of him. He never let them know where he was taking the company and what his vision and mission for the company was. He had never given them the training to deliver the results that he was looking for. And so he told me as he was reading this book, it struck him that he needed to engage his people better. And so he went out and bought 20 copies of the book and gave one to every employee, and every weekend they had to read a chapter. And every Monday before they started work, they would discuss what was in that chapter and ask themselves, are we modeling these behaviors here in our own workplace? The day he wrote me the email, he said it was a year since they finished the project. And he said his profits doubled from $2 million to $4 million a year because he got out of doing the $10 or $15 an hour work that he had been doing, micromanaging his people to death. His people step up to the plate and enabled him to do $500 an hour work that enabled him to connect with the customers better and generate, more business. So to me, that's our challenge as HR leaders. We all command our own ship. We're all leaders. We all take great pride in our work, and we want to see our companies excel.